Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today, presented by Snickers. Snickers satisfies. We're talking about the quarterbacks to add, drop, and trade right now here on Fantasy Football Today. We'll get to the running back waiver wire options as well. But it's an interesting week at the quarterback position because you got two guys that have been started in the majority of leagues for probably the majority of the season. Certainly one in Lamar Jackson, one in Derek Carr, who's having a nice start to his year. So those are the two quarterbacks that are on a bye this week. So probably having to replace one for sure, maybe Derek Carr as well. So we could be looking at some good players to add this week, and there are some very good streaming options in the range of quarterbacks that we talk about, 65% of leagues or less on CBSSports.com. Carson Wentz, 4 straight games of 20 or more fantasy points. Daniel Jones might have his guys healthy in a potential shootout with the Chiefs. Jameis Winston, revenge game factor there for him. Taylor Heineke just had 95 yards rushing. We could talk about all these guys. You can see the full list and full write-up on all these players on CBSSports.com. Let's talk about a few of these guys, though, in terms of Carson Wentz. So, Heath, when you look at his performances lately, his worst game so far this season was against the Titans when he scored 7 fantasy points in their first meeting. But he's playing much better lately. Might get T.Y. Hilton back. Is he the favorite quarterback to add this week for you?
I have Winston, Bridgewater, Jones, Wentz, Heineke, all back-to-back, all very close in the projection. So it might change. He is right in that discussion. I love the fact that he's been a little bit more active in the running game. 4 carries for 23 yards last week. He's been a little bit better as a passer in terms of his efficiency. If he got T.Y. Hilton back as well against that bad Titans defense, that might be enough to push him to the top of this list.
Are you back in on Daniel Jones?
Who is Daniel Jones throwing to? That would probably be the biggest thing for me. I think this is a bad spot for the Giants because at some point the Chiefs are probably not going to be as bad as they've been this season. But it's also a spot where he should be playing from behind. If he could get Sterling Shepard back, or Kenny Galladay back, or Kadarius Toney back, then I would be back in on Daniel Jones.
Dave, I know on the podcast you said you like Teddy Bridgewater, so he kept his streak intact of 34 or more pass attempts, at least 22 fantasy points. He had 33 attempts against the Browns and only 17 fantasy points. So the threshold still remains the same.
I'm a big fan of his this week, but it's with a couple of things in mind. Number one, I'm expecting him to be named the starter. We don't know for sure if that's going to happen. Number two, we need to make sure that Jerry Jeudy's back on the field for him. If he's got another target like Jerry Jeudy, I'm going to like him a lot. But the one thing that we know for sure is that Denver's playing Washington. Washington's allowed at least 26 fantasy points to each of the last 6 quarterbacks they've faced, including Jameis Winston, including Daniel Jones. I think Teddy Bridgewater's got a great shot at getting you around 25 fantasy points. My second favorite quarterback to pick up behind Wentz.
All right, so we'll see what happens for Bridgewater. Hopefully, again, he is named the starter. Tyrod Taylor could be the starter for the Texans this week. He's expected to practice on Wednesday. And then you see the guys there. The 3 at the bottom are worth mentioning. Keenum and Flacco, more 2 quarterback league options, super flex leagues options. You're not picking those guys up in 1 quarterback leagues. And then Deshaun Watson. So the trade rumors are certainly out there. The Texans are probably calling every NFL insider that they've ever met and telling them that they are putting Deshaun Watson and making him available to every team, as we know. Dolphins, Panthers, Broncos, Washington, Philadelphia. There are plenty of teams that could use a quarterback upgrade. We just don't know if he'll be able to play this year. But are you guys planning to maybe stash Deshaun Watson now with the chance of him being traded and still playing? The trade deadline is November 2nd.
I've really only considered it in 2 quarterback and super flex leagues.
But he's rostered in those leagues.
Right. He's already rostered in those leagues. I just think, for me personally, I don't have the roster spots to put him on my bench. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my mind that he might actually contribute to a fantasy team this season.
But we've got a week. The clock is ticking. A week from today at 4 o'clock, next Tuesday, November 2nd. That's the trade deadline in the NFL. If he's not traded by then, you know what to do with Deshaun Watson. You can wipe him off your roster. If you think you can dedicate 1 spot to him, knowing what the upside can be, you go ahead and you do it this week. You get Watson on your bench. You see what happens over the next 7 days.
Right. There's no guarantee that even if he's traded, he's playing this season because the Texans are doing the NFL a favor by not playing him. So it's just